Discover the incredible moment. A girl's heartwarming kiss transforms a prince's life forever. On a vibrant summer evening, the small town of Maplewood buzzed with laughter and joy, colors dancing in the twilight. Emma stood at the edge of the fair, heart racing. She spotted the Ferris wheel, each car rising and falling, mirroring her hopes. She wasn't just a 14-year-old girl. She was the anchor for her family, her ailing father's lantern against the shadows of his past. Life had catapulted her into grown-up responsibilities far too soon, yet here, surrounded by festivities, she felt a fleeting sense of freedom. But then something extraordinary happened. Amidst the laughter and the delightful sense of funnel cakes, she caught a glimpse of Danny, the mayor's son, his smile brightening the night. They shared a look that sparked like the fireworks exploding overhead. In that moment of connection, her worries momentarily melted away. He approached, their eyes locking as rockets lit the sky, illuminating the hope swirling between them. In a whimsical blur, they leaned in, sharing a tender kiss, brief, electric. It felt like time stopped, pure magic exchanged beneath the night sky. The moment, though beautiful, was soon tainted by whispers. The prideful tension in the air shifted as townsfolk noticed. Emma's heart-sunk judgment hung heavy in the balance of small-town lives. She withdrew, hurt and confused, retreating into her worries about home and her father's unspoken struggles. But Danny felt the tug of something greater within him. His world of privilege felt suffocating, full of expectations he had never chosen. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days stretched long, filled with the weight of gossip. Emma felt it pressing down on her, reminding her of her family's struggles more than ever. She hid her heart, but Danny's spirit yearned for more. He began volunteering at the community center, hoping to connect, to break free. He saw not just Emma's struggle but her indomitable spirit, and it drew him closer. But just as their lives seemed to take different paths, disaster struck. An unexpected fire raged through the fairgrounds, smoke curling into the sky as chaos ensued. Panic erupted and Emma's heart raced as she dashed through the crowd. The fair had been their escape, now it was a battleground. In that moment of urgency, their eyes met again and time slowed. Together they faced the fire, realizing their shared threads of resilience. Surrounding them, the community rallied, hearts united in the effort to save what mattered. Caught in the turmoil, Emma and Danny must decide whether to let fear and judgment extinguish the flicker of hope they began to kindle, or to ignite a flame of courage that could light their way. As they grasped hands, a spark flared, not just for their bond, but for their town. Emma's heart vibrated with possibility, leaving readers breathless, eager to discover if love and community could truly conquer the fires of prejudice and doubt that threatened to consume them all. The air was thick with smoke and fear as flames danced against the darkening sky. But in that chaos, a quiet determination ignited within Emma. Their hands intertwined, she felt Danny's warm grip, and it gave her strength. They weren't just kids in a fairy tale. They were now part of something bigger, a community trying to pull together in the face of destruction. She knew in her heart that they couldn't let this fire be the end. "Come on. We need to help," Emma shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. Danny nodded, urgency sharpening his typically easygoing expression. He had always been caught between expectation and freedom, but here now with Emma, he felt a rush of clarity. They moved as one through the writhing crowd, hurrying to gather children who had strayed too far from their parents. Emma focused on the little ones, her maternal instincts taking over. She gathered them under her wing, reassuring the wide-eyed kids that they were safe. Danny, meanwhile, helped guide the adults towards the exit, shouting words of encouragement as people headed for safety. "Over here. This way," Danny yelled, his voice echoing like a beacon. Emma watched in awe as he took charge. The fire brightened, illuminating the determination on his face. She realized this was him. This was the side of Danny she hadn't yet seen, the true hero. They stole glances at each other across the chaos, and each look deepened their bond. Crazy as it was, this shared whirlwind of fear and purpose felt liberating. Emma, usually drowning in worry about her father, felt a small spark of hope sparking near the edges of her heart. But the fire raged on, twisting and turning through the fairgrounds, painting the night in ominous shades of orange and red. People screamed and sirens wailed in the distance. Emma's heart hammered loudly in her chest as her gaze fell to the collapsing tents that once held laughter and joy. What if we don't get out in time? Emma whispered to herself, tightening her grip on Danny's hand. He could feel the tremors of her fear. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about tackling the doubts and judgments that loomed larger than the flames engulfing their fare. We will. We have to, he assured her, his voice steady, firm. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, they both knew they couldn't abandon the hope that burned brighter than any fire. Then, unexpectedly, a loud crash drowned out their thoughts. In an instant, a nearby booth collapsed, sending debris flying toward the panicked crowd. Emma felt her breath catch. She watched as a group of children stumbled back in fear. Without thinking, she sprinted toward them. "Get back!" Emma shouted, and just as she reached the children, something heavy landed nearby, sending a shockwave of heat over her. She grimaced, pushing through the pain. But she would protect them, she had to. Danny was right behind her, racing toward the chaos, instinctively grabbing the nearest child and leading them to safety. A single moment, a choice was all it took, one that would define them both forever. Together, they faced the flames, their hearts intertwined in a powerful rhythm of bravery. Emma realized that no matter the outcome, they were fighting not just to save a fair, but to save each other, to protect the flicker of a deeper connection forming between them. As the last remnants of the fair yard turned to ash and a fragile dawn threatened to break, Emma wondered if they would be able to rise from the ashes together. What new path might await them once the smoke cleared? But just then, as they pulled back from the flames, a new sound rippled through the crowd, a sound neither of them could ignore, the distant wail of a siren. But this time it wasn't just the fire department approaching. This was a sound that promised change, a reckoning. What would it bring? Emma's breath came in sharp bursts as she sprinted back toward the gathering crowd, her heart pounding not only with fear for her own safety, but with an inexplicable hope. The sirens were getting closer, the wails echoing against the chaos, mixing with the crackling of the flames. She could see Danny a few feet away, still steadfast, guiding people with a sense of calm that seemed incredibly out of place amidst the terror. "Danny!" she called, her voice barely carrying over the cacophony. He turned, his expression focused, golden light from the growing fire dancing over his features. He signaled for her to come to him. "I think we've done all we can. We need to go now," Danny shouted as he reached her side. Emma felt a sudden surge of defiance. "No, we can't just leave. There are still people here. But we can't help anyone if we're trapped too," Danny replied, urgency creeping into his voice. The flames flickered dangerously close, a reminder of the very real threat they faced. Emma's chest tightened as fear prickled around her. What about the others? What if someone else left behind? "We'll come back, I promise," Danny said, gripping her shoulders as if to ground her amidst the swirling chaos. "But right now we need to save ourselves first so we can help them." For a brief second, fear wrestled with her fierce need to help. But then she looked into Danny's eyes, saw the determination there, and the wave of warmth washed over her again. She nodded, albeit reluctantly. As they began to shuffle toward the exit, the sirens grew louder, a growing chorus of hope and urgency. The crowd was still thick with people, but together they pushed through, moving as a unit, a shared pulse of instinct and care. "Stay close," Danny urged, taking her hand again. Suddenly the ground trembled beneath them, as if the world was shaking in response to their plight. Emma glanced back to see a monstrous flame shoot skyward, illuminating the panic etched on the faces of those who were still struggling. She felt a tug in her heart, a physical ache at the thought of leaving anyone behind. "Danny!" she yelled again, her voice tinged with desperation. "We can't just go. We have to trust that the fire department will take it from here," he replied, his grip on her hand tightening as he tried to lead her away from the chaos. Emma hesitated, but then she remembered their pact. They had come together as allies, each of them lifting the other. To leave now meant leaving her own strength behind. Needing to stay in the moment, she pulled Danny back, catching his surprised gaze. "We have to keep moving, but we can't forget anyone." Let us at least check the nearby booths for stragglers. Danny looked at her, a mix of admiration and concern on his face. All right, but let us be quick. They navigated through the still panicked crowd, checking the dimly lit corners of the fairground, moving cautiously, making sure that they didn't miss a single terrified face. Each small act of bravery they encountered, helping a toddler find their parent, guiding an elderly person to safety, reminded Emma of the strength of their community, a resilience that mirrored her own inner courage. She felt emboldened every time someone smiled in thanks, acknowledging their shared struggle. But then, as they moved deeper into the destructing sight, a cry rang out, piercing through the din. Help! Someone please! Emma's heart jarred at the sound. It was urgent, filled with fear, and it cut straight through the growing chaos. She and Danny exchanged frantic glances, their blood running cold. Where is it coming from? Danny asked, scanning the crowd. Emma could only point, her throat tight with panic. Over there. We have to go. Without a moment's hesitation, they dashed toward the sound, hearts racing as they joined the efforts of rescuers. Deep down, Emma felt a flame of hope flickering, battling against the fear that wrapped tightly around them. What if they could save whoever was trapped? What if this act of courage bonded them even more? But just as they neared the noise, the ground beneath them trembled again, and pieces of the fairground began to collapse around them. They had to decide to risk everything for a call or retreat into safety. What would they choose? Emma's heart raced as she and Danny pushed closer to the source of the cries. The world around them blurred, the flames licking at the sky, casting eerie shadows on their path. Each step felt heavier, as uncertainty weighed on her. The chaotic surroundings faded, leaving only the desperate call for help echoing in her mind. Stay behind me, Danny urged, pulling her closer as they rounded a booth engulfed in smoke. The air was thick, and the heat became almost unbearable. It felt like the ground was alive, writhing with danger beneath their feet. Over here, Danny shouted, pointing toward a small space tucked beside a toppled booth. Emma's eyes widened as she spotted a figure curled up on the ground, a woman trapped under a fallen beam, her face streaked with soot, eyes wide with fear. Help! Please! The woman cried, her voice barely above a whisper, strained with pain. Emma moved instinctively, going toward her. Hold on! We're coming! Her own heart echoed in her ears, but this time it was fueled by purpose. Danny knelt beside her, trying to lift the beam. It's too heavy. We need to get something to prop it up. He glanced around frantically, looking for anything that could help. Emma searched. Her gaze caught a long piece of wood nearby, and with renewed determination, she scrambled over to grab it. Use this, she called, dragging it toward Danny. Together they wedged the makeshift prop under the beam. It held, slightly lifting the weight off the woman. You're going to be okay, Emma whispered as she leaned down to meet the woman's terrified gaze. Just keep breathing, all right? The woman nodded slowly, tears mingling with the dirt on her face. Danny's muscles strained as he kept the beam propped up, sweat glistening on his brow. Emma could see the fire reflected in his wide eyes, the fear creeping back in. Come on, we've got this, she urged. Just a little more. With a final shove, they pulled the woman free. Emma felt a surge of triumph as she cradled the woman's head, gently moving her out from underneath. Thank you, the woman gasped as she gasped for air, her hands trembling as she grasped Emma's arm. Just stay still, Emma said softly, brushing soot-covered hair away from the woman's face. She turned to see if Danny was all right, but her instinctive reassurance was cut short by a deeper tremor beneath them. The ground shuddered violently, and Emma felt reality blur again. Get back! Danny cried, suddenly pulling Emma away just as pieces of the booth crumbled beside them. Emma stumbled, catching herself against him, her heart racing wildly. They watched as chaos unfolded around them, the reality of the moment crashing down as the world spiraled. Not here. We need to get her somewhere safe, Danny shouted over the noise, urgency flowing from every word. They glanced around, but the crowd had only scattered further. Over there. Emma pointed to a group of people gathered near a path leading away from the disaster. We can get her to them. Together, they helped the woman to her feet, supporting her as they fought against the frantic push of the crowd. The chaos seemed to stretch on forever, but hope flickered in Emma's chest. They were doing this together, bonded by a shared mission. They weren't just saving a life. They were embodying the spirit of the community. But just as they approached the safety of their fellow townspeople, another powerful tremor rolled through. Emma's heart sank. Would they make it? Danny, hold on tight, she shouted, gripping the woman firmly. A plume of smoke billowed out, and fear surged back into Emma's mind. Would this be the moment that changed everything? Just then Danny squeezed her hand, determined. We can't stop now. The fire flared behind them, casting light on their path, illuminating their resolve. Fate hung in the balance. What would their next move be? Would they find safety, or would they face a deeper reckoning? Emma felt the weight of the chaos pressing down on them. Each step grew heavier, her lungs demanding more air as smoke churned around them. She could barely think over the roar of the flames and the terrified cries still echoing. Come on, move, Danny urged, dragging the woman, whose legs seemed to falter beneath her. Emma couldn't let despair sink in. Just a little farther, she said, glancing back at the fire dancing even closer to them. Flames leaped like hungry beasts, clawing at the debris strewn across the ground. The smoke clawed at her throat, making her cough. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Danny pushed ahead, shouting, "There's an opening." To the left. Emma barely registered their path, her focus solely on the woman, who was gasping for breath. Stay with us, she encouraged, her voice wavering yet filled with fierce determination. They maneuvered through twisting passages, their hearts pounding as the ground shook again. Less intense this time, but enough to remind them of the urgency. Help! Over here! A man shouted, waving his arms. Emma's heart soared. Finally, help! They stumbled toward him, every step an act of defiance against the chaos behind them. The man's eyes widened as they reached him, panic flipping into action. We need to get her to safety. Together, they managed to ease the woman into a circle of several townspeople, who quickly gathered around her. The sense of community felt electric, a protective shield against the nightmare unfolding outside. Get water. We need cool cloths, someone yelled. The camaraderie was astounding. Emma felt a thread of hope weaving through the madness as she stepped back, taking a breath. But relief was short-lived. A deafening roar sounded, drowning out everything around them. Emma spun to see a larger part of the booth giving way, collapsing toward the crowd. Run! Danny shouted, grabbing Emma's arm just as she caught sight of tumbling debris. Instinct kicked in. She pushed the fear down, her entire being focused on survival. As they fled, a strangled cry erupted from behind them, a child's voice calling for help. In an instant, Emma's heart shattered. Danny! We can't leave them. What? Danny looked back, the anguish evident on his face. We'll go back. But we need to find a secure spot first. No. Emma tore away from him, her pulse racing. We can't. I want tea. Danny's expression flickered with confusion and fear. Emma, no. You can't go back alone. But she was already moving, weaving through the crowd, her purpose igniting an unyielding fire within. The cries grew louder, echoing off the fear-stricken faces around her. Emma reached a small cluster of people huddled near a fallen tent. Is anyone trapped? She shouted, desperation seeping into her voice. Yes, a girl. She's under the tarp, shouted a woman, her face pale with fear. Emma wasted no time. She dashed toward the tangled mess of fabric. I'm coming. Underneath, the child whimpered, wide-eyed and terrified. Emma knelt beside her, heart racing, lifting the fabric with trembling hands. I'm here. I've got you. But as she pulled the girl free, the ground quaked violently again, more ferocious this time. Emma's stomach dropped as reality twisted. Would they make it out together? Danny! She screamed, fear clawing at her throat as she turned back to find him. The heat was unbearable now. As she searched, the sound of the flames and cries mingled into a cacophony that felt like a rising tide, threatening to drown them all. There, amidst the chaos, she spotted him. But his face was stricken with horror as he watched another structure lean precariously behind her. Emma's blood ran cold. Danny, move. Would they escape this nightmare together? Or was this their last stand? Time slowed and choices loomed large. Everything she knew was about to change, and deep down, she understood what would they uncover when the smoke finally cleared? Emma's heart raced as she locked eyes with Danny, the fear in his gaze igniting a sense of urgency within her. She couldn't afford to second-guess herself now. She had to act. Go, go, she cried, pulling the girl whose tiny frame quivered, closer to her. We need to get to safety. But as they turned, a deafening crack echoed through the air, louder than anything she had ever heard. It resonated deep in her bones. Emma, look out! Danny's voice sliced through the chaos, pulling her attention back just in time. She stumbled backward as a chunk of the booth they had been huddled near broke away, crashing to the ground with a thunderous boom. Dust and debris flew into the air, darting like lethal projectiles. Head for the alley, Danny yelled, motioning toward a narrow escape route cutting through the mayhem. It was their chance, the only way out. With the little girl in her arms, Emma sprinted forward, past terrified faces and desperate cries. Panic surged around them as smoke swept across the ground like a thick blanket. It clawed at her throat, but she pushed through, her will fueled by a single thought. They would survive. Danny was close behind, his breathing labored. Just a little further, he shouted, his voice strained but unwavering. Emma turned to reassure the girl, who was clinging closely to her, eyes wide with fear. You're okay. I promise I won't let go. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them again. Emma stumbled, losing her footing as a painful jolt of fear echoed through her, sending ripples of doubt spiraling through her mind. Danny! She gasped as she hit the ground hard. The little girl falling beside her, he was instantly by her side, finding her eyes with urgency. Get up! We can't stop now. With Danny's help, Emma rose quickly, brushing the dirt and ash from her clothes. She lunged for the girl, who had started to crawl away in fear. It's okay, Emma urged, her voice a soothing balm in the chaos. You're safe with us. Just as they gathered their bearings, another structure nearby began to collapse, groaning like a wounded animal. The noise was relentless, each crash pushing them further back into panic. Emma knew they had to move. Follow us, Danny shouted, extending his hand to the child, who hesitated, confusion flickering in her eyes. But then from the depths of her fear, a flicker of trust emerged as she took Danny's hand. Keep running, Emma shouted over the noise, racing down the alleyway where dark shadows stretched long. The flames' glow flickered behind them. Hot air surged forward, threatening to consume everything. They dashed around a corner, the alley squeezing them between high walls, the world narrowing down to survival. Emma risked a glance back, her heart pounding in her chest. Had they left the nightmare behind? It was impossible not to look. Danny's hand tightened on her arm. Focus, Emma. Just keep going. As they turned yet another corner, the sound of the chaos began to fade, turning into a distant roar. They had made it outside the worst of it. Emma could see clear blue sky ahead, the sunlight glinting like a promise. Relief washed over her, pulling the weight of dread off her shoulders, until she noticed the gathering crowd just ahead, people standing frozen, their faces drawn tight with concern. They watched horrified as the flames twisted and writhed behind them. Is everyone okay? Shouted a man from the crowd, breaking the tense silence. Emma glanced at the little girl, whose grip on her hand had tightened. We're okay, Emma confirmed, though her voice wavered. But inside, a different kind of chaos twisted in her heart, as she realized what they had just survived. Fear still clung to her like smoke. She thought of everything, everyone, except the toll it had taken on her mind. Suddenly, the crowd surged, pulling her from her thoughts. What happened? A voice called, concern lacing every syllable as they approached. All she could think of was how fragile everything felt. The girl needed comfort, Danny needed assurance, and she needed something solid to hold on to. And then she locked eyes with Danny. The connection between them was undeniable. We have to find everyone else, she whispered, though uncertainty dripped from her words. No one was lost yet, right? No one else needed her help? But as the smoke faded into the air, leaving room for the sharp clarity of reality, Emma sensed that this was only the beginning of understanding what they would face next. How much had really changed? Fear gripped her heart. This was just the quiet before the storm. What awaited them once they uncovered the truths hidden amidst the ashes? Emma stepped forward, but her legs felt like jelly. The crowd barely noticed as they pressed against one another, eyes glued to the chaos behind them. Glimmers of hope washed over her, yet were dashed by the weight of uncertainty. Emma! Danny pulled her back to reality, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the gathering. We have to move now. We're not out of danger yet. She nodded, but the questions hung heavy in the air like the smoke that still curled at the edges of the alley. Were their friends safe? Had anyone else made it through? The little girl beside her trembled, her big eyes darting around as if skimming through the crowd searching. Emma crouched down to meet her gaze. What's your name? Lily, came the small reply, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily, I promise you we're going to find your family, Emma said, summoning every ounce of confidence she could muster. Just stick with us, okay? Lily nodded, gripping Emma's hand tightly. The connection between them felt electric, a contrast to the despair swirling just moments before. Let us go, Danny urged again, leading the way through the thinning crowd. As they moved away from the chaos of destruction, Emma's heart raced not only from fear but a burgeoning sense of responsibility. She couldn't let Lily or Danny down. They were in this together. As they navigated through the maze of onlookers, Emma glanced up at the sky. The blue seemed impossibly bright against the backdrop of calamity. It was as if the universe was trying to remind her of hope, even amid despair. What were those noises? Lily asked suddenly, her voice shaking. Emma hesitated, unsure how to explain. It was an accident, she finally replied, her spirit deflating. Danny glanced back and added, accidents happen, but we're okay now. We're safe. Yet, was it that simple? Emma's thoughts tangled together as doubt bubbled up. What if their safety was just an illusion? Do you think they're all right? She asked Danny quietly, lifting her voice just enough to reach him. I want to believe they are. His response was firm, but Emma could see the uncertainty etched into his features. It mirrored her own silent fears. Pushing forward, they approached a makeshift gathering point that emergency teams had set up. The sight of first responders brought a rush of relief. Could help finally be on the way? Is my mom here? Lily whispered, her small voice cracking with fear. Emma knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. Let us ask them, she assured, even though her insides twisted at the thought of the answer. We'll find your family together. They approached a group of volunteers directing people, their expressions serious. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach as they explained their situation. Lily's tiny hand was a lifeline as she squeezed it. Suddenly a woman burst through the crowd, her face streaked with worry. Lily! She cried, and the world around them faded into the background. Tears flooded Lily's eyes as she rushed to embrace her mother. Mom! The sound of their reunion melted the cold dread that clung to Emma's heart, bringing a warmth she hadn't realized she craved. Emma stepped back, letting them have their moment, but Danny leaned close to her. You did great, he said softly, a genuine smile breaking through his earlier tension. But there was still a storm brewing inside her. The chaos wasn't just behind them. It lingered in the corners of her mind. Thanks, she murmured, but her thoughts were distant. If we got separated, Danny placed a hand on her arm. Let us just take a moment to breathe. He gestured toward a nearby bench where people were finding some semblance of order as they sat. Emma looked around, seeing the frightened faces begin to calm and find solace. But as relief washed over the crowd, a nagging thought niggled at the back of her mind. What truly had happened? The answers were still hidden. Emma knew that whatever chaos had unfolded, they had to face it. We need to find out what caused the explosion, she said, voicing her worry into the air. Danny's brow furrowed. You think it was just an accident? I don't know, Emma admitted, her heart racing once more. But if we don't understand what happened, it might not be over yet. As their eyes met and understanding passed between them, there was no turning back now. They had to dig deeper. What awaited them in the aftermath of destruction and uncertainty? Emma took a deep breath, the air thick with a mix of fear and determination. She and Danny exchanged glances, the weight of their unspoken agreement settling over them like a shroud. It was time to act. Where do we even start? Danny asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Emma scanned the area, her mind racing as she considered their options. People were still clustering around the emergency teams, some sitting on the ground, others pacing anxiously. Let's head over there. She pointed toward a nearby building that seemed partially intact. It might offer a better vantage point, maybe even some answers. They started moving again, Lily squeezed between them, her small presence a constant reminder of why they were pushing forward. As they approached the building, they heard snippets of conversations, fragments of fears and hopes. "What do you think happened?" a woman asked. "I heard it was a gas leak," another replied, voice shaky. "Maybe a bomb?" That would explain the noise. Each word felt like a stone, heavy and oppressive. Emma shuddered at the thought and guided Lily close. "Stay with us, okay?" The girl nodded, determination flickering in her eyes despite her fear. They approached a set of doors, the entrance leading into the relative safety of the building. An emergency worker stood guard there, and when Emma reached him, his weary expression softened slightly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Can you tell us what happened? We need to know if it's safe." The worker hesitated, glancing back toward the chaos outside. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I can tell you emergency services are doing their best to check the area. Stay vigilant, please. What if there are more explosions?" Danny's voice trembled. The worker shrugged, his expression grave. "I can't say they're 1TB. Just find safety. Keep close to the designated areas." Emma turned to Danny, her mind racing. "We can't just wait here. We have to figure this out. Emma will get caught up in something. We need to think about our own safety too," he urged, but the spark in Emma's heart pushed her forward. "I can't sit here and do nothing. People need answers. We can at least help." Danny sighed, conflicted but ultimately nodded. He understood her need for action. It was a reflection of their shared courage. As they moved deeper into the building, the air was cooler, a welcome relief from the heated chaos outside. Sunlight peeked through the broken windows, casting shadows across the dusty floors. The place felt abandoned yet alive with the echoes of anxious voices and the distant sounds of sirens. They found an office with a large map taped to the wall. Emma nervously traced her finger across the city layout. If the explosion originated here, it might have spread to these areas. Suddenly, the door creaked, and another emergency worker stepped inside. His uniform was drenched in sweat, but there was urgency in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he warned. "It's okay," Emma said, holding her ground. "We need to know what's happening. Can't you help us?" The man hesitated, then shook his head. "I can't go into details, but we suspect foul play. It's not safe for anyone, especially kids." He paused and thought for a moment, his face softening. "But if you want to help, stay clear of the explosion site and stick together. Keep your heads down." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Foul play. The word echoed in the back of her mind, sending waves of fear through her. But just as hope flickered within her to connect the dots, there was a sudden loud bang from outside. Danny grabbed her arm. "What was that?" Lily's grip tightened around Emma's hand as they all instinctively turned toward the sound. Their hearts pounded in sync as they exchanged panicked glances, understanding that danger was still lurking. What if this isn't over?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with realization. Danny's expression mirrored her fear as they braced for whatever came next. With their path still uncertain, they knew one thing for sure. They had to uncover the truth before chaos struck again. What unseen forces were at play, pushing them further into the heart of the storm? The air outside was thick with anxiety. The exploded silence after that last bang echoed in Emma's ears like an unanswered question. She could feel her heart racing, each beat sounding a silent alarm, urging her to move. Danny's grip on her arm was firm, but that didn't stop the shivers that ran down her spine. "Maybe we should leave," he suggested quietly, his face pale. "We can find a safe place and wait for more news." But Emma shook her head, the weight of her decision pressing heavily inside her. "No, Danny. We can't just hide. We need to know what's going on." Turning away from him, she forced herself to focus on the task at hand. The emergency worker's words replayed in her mind, a warning about foul play. Her eyes darted back to the map on the wall. Each marked area felt like a puzzle piece waiting to be turned and rearranged until the truth emerged. "Lily, stay close to me," Emma said softly, kneeling down to the little girl's level. She looked determined, which eased some of Emma's fears. "We need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, her grip tightening on Emma's hand. "I can be brave," she declared, and for a brief moment, a flicker of pride lit Emma's heart. "All right, let's keep moving," Emma urged, an energy building within her. They left the office and retraced their steps toward the entrance. Outside, the scene was chaotic. More ambulances had arrived, their sirens wailing like banshees in the background. People were still milling about, some dazed and others focused on their phones, relaying information to family members or friends. "What now?" Danny whispered, glancing nervously at the crowd. Emma spotted a group of emergency workers huddled together. They were separated from the rest, talking emphatically, pointing at a series of maps sprawled on a nearby table. "We need to get closer," she said, unable to keep her curiosity contained. "We can't," Danny protested, but she was already moving, drawn by a blend of fear and determination. "Emma, wait!" But she didn't stop. As they approached, Emma leaned in, trying to catch snippets of their conversation. Second explosion, possible threats throughout the city. One of them was holding a radio tightly, their eyebrows drawn together in concentration. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the direction of the crowd, followed by a collective gasp. Emma's heart leapt into her throat. Without thinking, she turned and ran, with Lily close behind her, Danny trailing reluctantly. "What if it's more trouble?" Danny shouted after her, but she ignored him, driven by instinct. They pushed through the masses, spotting the source of the commotion, a fallen streetlight, tangled in wires, but thankfully no one appeared injured. It was a false alarm, but the panic was palpable, a wave washing over the gathered crowd. A woman nearby clutched her child to her chest, tears glistening in her eyes, as she reassured him everything was all right. Emma felt the weight of that fear deep in her chest, understanding the urgency of the situation more than ever. "We can't stay out here," Danny urged again, scanning the area. "We need to find a way to help without putting ourselves in danger." Emma bit her lip, considering. He was right. But how could she possibly stand by when she felt they were so close to the truth? Something dark was unfolding. And if there was more to uncover, they had to dig deeper. "Let us find the command center," she finally decided. "If we can get more information, maybe we can help." Just as they turned to head back toward safety, a loud crackling voice came over the loudspeakers set up around the area. "Attention! Everyone needs to evacuate immediately. We are facing potential danger. Please follow the instructions of emergency personnel." The words hit Emma like a punch. "They're evacuating." But before either Danny or Lily could respond, they felt a tremor beneath their feet. The ground shook and all three of them stumbled. "What is happening?" Lily screamed, her face pale as the color drained from her cheeks. With panic swelling in her throat, Emma clenched her fists. This was far from over. They had come too close to the truth, and it felt like the storm was just beginning. "Stay close," Emma shouted, determination fueling her voice even as the earth trembled beneath them. What had they uncovered, and what danger lay ahead? As they quickly gathered themselves, a new question hung in the air. If they ran now, would they ever uncover the truth? The wind howled, spiraling smoke and fear through the streets of Maplewood. Emma, Danny, and Lily stood close together. Courage was their only tether. Despite the chaos that surrounded them, there was an unmistakable electricity in the air, a sense of unity born from their shared struggle. "Listen, we need to find my dad." Danny's voice was tight, worry etched across his brow. His father had been at the fairground, and each second felt heavy with uncertainty. "Then we won't stop until we do," Emma replied, pushing her fears aside. She glanced at Lily, who clutched her hand, determination brightening her wide eyes. "We're together, and we'll find everyone." They moved as a unit, dodging debris and fleeing from the cries of panic. Emma's heart thudded wildly as they entered a nearby alley, seeking shelter from the mounting confusion. "It's just a gas leak," a passerby muttered as they passed. "That's what they said at the command center." But the glances exchanged between them hinted at doubt. Emma's gut twisted. The undercurrent of fear they all felt was unshakable. They pressed on, reaching what had once been a quiet corner of the fair. Now it resembled a battleground. Smoke curled up from broken booths. But amongst the debris, Emma felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. This town, her community, still stood resilient. Together they weather this storm. Suddenly, they were met by a familiar face. "Emma!" It was Sarah, one of Emma's closest friends, her hair tousled and eyes wide with fear. Relief rushed through Emma's veins at the sight of her. "Sarah, you're safe." Emma felt a weight lifting. "Have you seen my dad or Danny's?" "I don't know. They were helping people." Sarah's voice cracked. There is so much chaos. We need to regroup. Everyone is looking for answers, but I think some people didn't make it back. Those words cut deeper than any blade. Emma pressed her lips together, squeezing Lily's small hand. We can't focus on that now. We need to find the command center. They'll have information. As they turned, the air around them splintered with the sound of the sirens, echoing like a heartbeat against the panic. But their combined resolve pressed them forward. Stay together, Danny urged, leading the way as they pushed through thickening crowds of scared faces. Finally, they saw a gathering of emergency personnel, their stark uniforms a beacon of hope amidst the turmoil. Please, we're looking for our families, Emma called out, her voice rising above the din. Stay calm. We're evacuating everyone, a uniformed officer responded. If you have loved ones here, wait by the medical tent. They're being brought in for safety checks. Can we help? Danny asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Only if you stay out of danger. The officer nodded, recognizing the fire in their eyes. Before Emma could respond, a loud crash reverberated nearby, scattering the crowd. She flinched, the sound seeping into her bones. We have to move, she urged, dragging Danny and Lily towards safety, hearts racing as they dodged the chaos. They reached the medical tent, a place filled with familiar faces. Her heart raced, desperately searching for her dad. Moments stretched impossibly as chaos swirled around them. Then Emma saw him. Dad! She cried, relief flooding her. He was on his feet, soot-covered but alive, a weak smile breaking through the fear. Emma! He rushed forward, enveloping her in his arms. Tears blurred her vision as they embraced, the weight of worry easing just slightly. I thought, Emma said, her voice trembling. I'm all right, sweetheart. I was just helping people get to safety. His eyes flicked to Danny and Lily. Is everyone okay? We made it, Danny echoed, confidence igniting their spirits. Let us stay together. We can't lose each other again, Emma said, her voice steady now. We can rebuild this. Together. As the three of them embraced the warmth, an overwhelming sensation loomed over Maplewood. Not just the crisis but the power of unity, resilience, and hope that sprang from tragedy. And in the midst of the chaos, something incredible had transformed. Within each of them, Emma, who had always felt burdened, now recognized her strength. Danny, who had yearned for freedom, discovered responsibility, and Lily, who had been afraid, emerged as a beacon of courage. They were no longer just survivors, they were a family forged in the fires of fear, ready to rise from the ashes of despair. As the clouds of confusion began to clear and dawn broke, casting light onto their resolve, Emma knew this was just the beginning. Together, they would rebuild Maplewood in their own paths. Their journey of courage was just unfolding, ready to inspire others, and that's where you come in. You need to subscribe now to not miss an incredible journey ahead. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed this algorithm and help spread their story. Comment your thoughts on this ending. Let us know how it made you feel. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Support the channel and be part of these exciting stories.